And I reckon we're 2 minutes past, Kate. Why don't we get going?
Okay, so we're recording. Okay then. So thank you, Jos, for coming, especially on your holidays. And thank you to your wife for giving you up for an hour to talk to us. So we've just ran through what we thought we would do this morning. And yeah, that sounds okay to you. So I reckon we get straight into it. If you're happy, Jos, to tell us a bit about Buurtzorg, and then we'll get into some question and answer session.
Good. How long do you want to tell me something about Buurtzorg?
I reckon we've got about half an hour for you to talk to us about Buurtzorg, and then half an hour for questions.
Okay, good. Yes, as perhaps you all know, I worked as a nurse myself. At the moment, I think I work for 38 years in healthcare, different fields. I worked as a nurse in hospitals, in mental care, but most of the time I worked in community healthcare as a community health nurse in the 80s of the last century. After that, I worked for 10 years as a manager in 2 big home care organizations, director innovations. And what I saw in those years was that trying to deliver the service as good as possible became more and more difficult because of the systems and the structure of the organization. So we saw, I saw more and more management, more and more policymakers, more and more HR people, people on the back office, finance, and so on. And all these people had, in my opinion, a negative influence on the front line. So the healthcare workers had to deal more and more with bureaucracy, with all kinds of rules and regulations which were not supporting the creating the solutions for the people, for the patients. So when I went back to the principles in the 80s, when I worked myself as a community health nurse, we didn't have all these management layers. We didn't have the back office. We just had frontline workers working together in the community, together with GPs, together with social workers, together with volunteers. So you build your networks in the community, and that disappeared in Holland and in a lot of countries. So I decided to bring these principles back. So my idea about how to deliver the best possible service to patients, focused on a vision of independence and self-support, was that the craftsmanship, the intrinsic motivation of people should be leading in that. So what I did was build something based on a vision of how to deliver good community healthcare. Then also based on a vision of how to organize, because I was quite sure that all these management layers and all these top-down policies didn't help. They created a lot of confusion and a lot of disturbance for the frontline workers. So I said we are going to build this organization without management structure. And we are going to use and develop our own IT network, because it was in the time that Facebook was starting up. And we said, if we can create a community where we can share information, knowledge, and we can also reduce bureaucracy, then a lot of nurses can spend their time on patients instead of all the bureaucracy. So we said, we are going to skip all the rules and regulations, because a good nurse knows what to do. So she has to use her own brains and her colleagues to find out what are good solutions for patients. So we said we are going to start all over again. So we started just with 4 nurses in 2006. I also started to work again as a nurse. And the first years we developed this design. It became more and more clear what would be the perfect structure of the organization. So we said we are going to focus on neighborhoods. So that in the neighborhoods you can find the people you need. You can work together with the GPs, the social workers, the physiotherapists, the pharmacists, the volunteers. So the focus was on the neighborhood. So buurtzorg means neighborhood care. Then the scale of the teams would be not more than 10 or 12, because the idea was that every team should have the feeling of that they are a small own company. So they are units who are totally responsible for organizing everything in their neighborhood. So this scale of 10 with also high educated nurses. So that was another thing, but was quite different from all the home care organizations. And then we said, okay, we're going to build a back office as lean as possible. So we simplify all the back office activities. So we also simplified the way the health insurers asked us to report. So there was a very complicated system in Holland at that moment that we had to deal with 15, 20 different products, and you had to register to do your administration in time on all these products. So we said, no, we are just delivering one service, and that's creating solutions for people. So, but in the back office, in the IT system, we had some business rules. So we asked the nurses just to administer their time. And in the IT system, we could make reports which was connected with the products the health insurers asked. So we said, we have the real world where we are helping people, and we had the administrative world where we have to deal with all the stakeholders. So they knew that we were kind of a bit of fooling them, but we said the average price we get is the same. So for you, it's not a big difference, because you are paying the same to us as to others. So we started to work with this design. So small teams. We built the IT system ourselves, and we said at a certain moment, when the teams need support, it's good that there is a kind of a coach which supports the teams when it's necessary. So most of the teams can deal with everything themselves, but once in a while, when there is a conflict, or when somebody is ill for a long time, or there are some other problems in the neighborhood, then they need support from a coach. These coaches are all have been community nurses before, so they know the process, they know the primary process. So this is what we did in 2007. We had at the end of 2007 we had around 10 locations, and every time again the same thing happened. There were 4 or 5 nurses who quit their jobs. We hired them. The MV is the Foundation Buurtzorg. We hired them. Within a few weeks, a few months, they were running up. They were break even, and they were growing. And they were growing to 10, 12 nurses. And then they split up in 2 teams, and they went on like that. And that's what happened since 2007. And it led to 1,000 teams now. So we started with 1 team in 2006, 10 teams in 2007. And then it was every year 130, 140 new teams. So 1,500 new nurses coming in. And all started the same way. Just started to doing what I always used to do years before. Most of the nurses who started were elder nurses. They were around between 40 and 50, and they had a lot of experience. And they just said, okay, we had this period that all these organizations were bothering us to do our work. So now we get our control back on our work and our purpose, and we are going to do it based on our professional ethics instead of all kind of organizational roles. So this was from 2008 till now. We built a national network. So through all the country, we have these small teams. And year by year, they're just doing the same things. So we said we are not going to develop yearly strategies or vision meetings or whatever. Our focus is creating healthy communities, creating good community healthcare, and try to avoid disturbance for the nurses. We had a lot of important discussions in the meantime, because we had discussions on quality, because the inspection in Holland said, how can we measure quality? Because we had a lot of organizations had quality systems, ISO quality systems. So we said, these quality systems don't say anything about quality. That was my my perception. So what I said is, I think it would be good if we see what the results are of what we're doing. So, and the results can be defined in different ways. But what we said, okay, I knew about the Omaha system, which was used in Minnesota, in the USA. So we started, okay, we are going to implement the Omaha system step by step in the organization. And the Omaha system is classification system of problems, interventions, and outcome. So we said, if we have a clear language on how to define the problems and how to define the interventions, and we can measure the results, then we have a good system which gives us information and gives us a lot of knowledge about what are best practices, for example, we also could develop guidelines based on that. So we started to work with this in, I think, 2009, 2010. And we started also the discussion with the inspection, the Ministry of Health, the health insurers, and said this can be a national tool which can be used by all the home care organizations. And then you have a kind of a benchmark based on knowledge and practical information about what we're doing, instead of having knowledge about hours, minutes, and products. So that was, and at the moment, I think 80 or 90% of the home care organizations have to use the Omaha system. So that was an important thing. Then the inspection, I don't know how it is in Australia, but in Holland, the inspection is doing audits once in a while. So they come in and they visit some places, and then they had this idea about we look at the policy, we look at the quality systems, and then we know how organizations are doing. But you said, no, I think you should talk with patients and you should talk with nurses, and then you can look at the policies if it's needed. So at first they were quite skeptical about that, but we said, just come and visit us for a day, look at what the nurses are doing, and if you have some criticism, please let us know. But in 5 years' time, they changed the way they're doing audits. Now, at the moment, they're talking with patients first, they're talking with the teams, and they look into the system, and they see that the Omaha system is a very good tool to show what the results are. So half a year ago, I think I did an audit, and we had the best results ever on all the topics. So they said, first when they came in, they said self-organization. What is self-organization? and it looks like it's chaotic and everybody can decide on anything and so on. And then they saw that the teams they visited, they were very disciplined. They said, oh, they are using the right protocols if it's needed. They know where to find the right knowledge for these kind of patients. So they were really impressed by the way that the nurses were taking responsibility and were accountable for what they were doing. So I said responsibility, accountability comes together with self-organization. And they agreed that this was the way we are doing it was very good. So this is what we are doing all the time, try to invite stakeholders, show them how we work. Sometimes we organize coalitions, so we organize meetings with people from the ministry, with the care authority, people who deal with quality and so on. And we say, okay, these are our ideas. Please let us know what you think about it. So this was really helpful. And I should say from the beginning, we had a lot of support from the Dutch ministry. So there was this Dutch minister of health, Jet Bussemaker, she was called. And she visited already in 2007. We had just 3 or 4 teams. And she visited one of our teams. And she said, literally to me, she said, this is the reason that I became minister. So she said, this is what I want to support. These stories of these nurses are real, he said. Because he asked the nurses, what are you doing differently now than you did before in the organization you worked before? Because you are the same nurse, it's the same patient, but you have another feeling and another way of doing things. So I said, yes, these nurses said, yes, we can decide ourselves on what's needed at that moment. So he said, we can decide, for example, the assessment, before we started, the assessment was done by a separate institute. So we said, no, the assessment, the first moment you are in contact with the patient, you get a lot of information. So when it's done by another one, which is not taking care for this patient, you lose a lot of information. So you can only do the first impression one time. Right? So we said this process needs to be repaired. So the nurses should be responsible for the complete process of doing the assessment, taking care for the patient, try to avoid different tasks for different people. So try to see it in a holistic perspective. So we also changed, I think in 4 or 5 years, the Dutch Minister of Health, which was another one at that moment, skipped the assessment institute. So they said, no, from now on, the nurse is responsible for deciding on what's the problem, what's needed, what kind of care is needed to deliver. Also the evaluation should be done by the same nurse, because the relationship you are building with your patients, that's the most important part of good community healthcare. So in this way we changed, I think, the national policy in different ways. So we contributed to another national system of quality, so the Omaha system. We changed the idea that the inspection was looking at quality, and we also changed the payment system. And at the moment we are in a very interesting period, because at the moment we have discussions with the health insurers. And these discussions changed in time, because now we focus more and more on the content. So we are developing now, so it's called conscious contracts, and we're developing for more years, for 3 years, contracts where the content is leading. So we developed these contracts together. So we said, first, what is good community healthcare? Secondly, what does it ask from us as partners? So we are not against each other, but if we collaborate, we can use a lot of information and we can help each other. And the third is, how do we monitor the outcome? How do we monitor the results of what we're doing? And then what are we going to do when we don't agree? So that's and these contracts, we used to have contracts of 80, 90 pages. And now these contracts are 7, 8 pages and just writing down what is good. Okay, so this is a very important thing. This is what I'm doing together with my wife, who is a lawyer, and who said lawyers are always making the world much more difficult. Now they should contribute to simplify and not focusing on risks and on other things, but just focus on how can we create better results in healthcare. So in Holland now we have had several experiences with big health insurances to develop these kind of contracts, and I think we moved from taking care for people now on how can we prevent problems. So the focus is getting more and more on prevention, and that's one important topic. Another important topic in this contract is getting people out of the hospitals. So how can we take care for people at home instead of in hospitals? Because hospitals are places when people don't need to be there, you shouldn't be there. The third topic is e-health. So it comes together with the other two. So we want to use monitor systems at home. So when it's about heart failure or diabetes or CPD, but also with cognitive problems, that we think we can do a lot at home instead of in hospitals. We are building what we call pensions. So that's places for short stay. So when people can't stay at home for a while, but need a place to live, then they can stay in a pension. So bit by bit, we are building another infrastructure. And our new project is called ROJos Living. So we want to create groups of 10, 12 apartments where people who used to go to nursing homes can stay in the community. So our focus is, if we create inclusive societies, inclusive neighborhoods, dementia-friendly neighborhoods, and focuses on how can we support the lives of people with dementia in a way that they can lead as long as possible a normal life, then we can avoid, at least for a long time, we can avoid that they're going to nursing homes. My vision is that nursing homes are not healthy places. So it's when you concentrate problems, you get new problems. So that's my idea about how we should take care for people. So this is evaluating, and this self-organized way of working leads to a good connection between what's happening in this neighborhood, what's needed in this neighborhood, and the way the nurses are dealing with it. So there are differences all over the country. It's a bit different in Amsterdam than in the south, for example. And we said we need to support the differences. And then you have this, if we should have this policy, a national ROJos policy, that everybody should act the same, then you are disturbing the dynamic between the teams and the neighborhoods. So we said every nurse, every team understands the culture of their own neighborhood. So, and the way they deal with prevention in Amsterdam is a bit different than in some other regions. The social structures are different, social networks are different. So I said, it's kind of a living organism, as I see it, the way we organize. And by doing this way and keeping everything as simple as possible, we can do it with very low overhead. So at the moment, we besides the Buurtzorg 10,000 nurses, we also have 4,000 care workers doing domestic care. So in total, we have 14,000 workers, and we have around 50 people at our office, back office.
Yes, can I just ask you? Can you say a bit more about the home care workers? So a lot of the organisations here will have some qualified workers, and will have a lot of unqualified workers. So I know one of the questions that we had when we turned up was, but a lot of our workers are unqualified. Is this still going to work? So can you just say a bit about that, please?
Yeah. Yes, I think it's a very interesting question. We got it all the time. The workers who are working in the community as nurses, they are high qualified. So we have bachelor nurses. 70% of these nurses are registered nurses. So either bachelor or 1 degree lower. And then we have 30% nurse assistants in the teams. If you look at the social care, so the domestic care, most of these workers are not qualified. So part of them have a short education. We want to give them the opportunity to do some more education. But I think 2 years ago, in 2016, there was one of the bigger home care organizations who did social care get bankrupt. And the ministry asked us, do you want to participate in taking over part of these care workers? So we said, yes, we want. That's what we want. But then we want another perception on what they're doing. Because what they were doing was seen as cleaning the houses. So we said, no, these people are not cleaning the houses. They are supporting people. So that's another perception. And of course, they are cleaning the houses. That's the activities they are. But they do it because when they do it, people can live longer in their own house. And most of these workers have this perception. So they want to support people. They saw it as a kind of a devaluation when they became part of a cleaning company. So we said, okay, we're going to go back to call them supporters and people who have problems. Then we said, we want to use the same way of working as we did with Buurtzorg. So we are going to make small groups, focusing on neighborhoods. They are going to plan, schedule the work themselves. They do the assessment themselves and so on. So we had a tour in a few months with 2,500 of these workers. Every time again, there were around 100 workers. And we put them around tables. In these meetings, we said to them, we want you that you feel that you can feel responsible for what you're doing in your daily work. So they came from a very rigid organization, top down. Even the time they could spend on cleaning a toilet was defined. So 3 or 4 minutes. That was so they got a list. So we said, no, we think you can decide yourself what you need to do the house and so on. So in 2 months' time, we took over 2,500 workers. From one day to another, they started to work in self-organized teams. So the day before, they were part of this organization. They were instructed by the minute. On 25th of April 2016, they started to work as professional care workers. Everything went well. Through all the country, there were nowhere there were big problems. Now we are 2 years later, and these parts became the most profitable parts of the organization. So they were bankrupt in the other organization. The sickness leave was 13%, Now it's 3 or 4%. So there are a few big changes, and there are no problems with self-organization. So it's about if the task, if the things they need to do is connected with their abilities, then there are no problems. If you ask more from people that they can, and usually what I see in Holland, where self-organization goes wrong, is that self-organization is based on a management philosophy top-down. So they say you can organize yourself, but you should do this and this and this and this. So it's a kind of described self-organization. And what we said, no, it starts with the relationship between the care worker and the client. So there they have to develop something together, and they have to have a feeling based on a vision, because I think you should be clear on the vision that it should support self-independence. So, but when that fits, and the colleagues can choose each other, so that's also one of the things we're doing. So if they have new colleagues, they decide on it themselves. So they build kind of small ecosystems, and they feel responsible. Responsibility is built bit by bit. So, but for me, this was an experience that you say, okay, when you have 2,500 care workers, and they're all doing all over the country the same thing, and everything goes well, then you can say, I think this is a proof that it can be done very well with lower educated, unqualified workers.
Okay, thank you. That's been a very big debate that rumbles around, so I'm not surprised you get asked it a lot. And then finally, just before we move on to question and answers, because I'm really conscious of the time, will you say a little bit about Bertzorg Tay, the mental health teams? Because that's very different, I think.
Yes. Yes, that's Bertzorg T was in fact the first part that we did this conscious contract on. So it was funny, one of the bigger health insurers came to us and said, we want you to become the disruptor of the mental care in Holland. So that was a kind of an invitation we didn't expect. But they said, yes, we believe that the way you are dealing with mental problems, it's much more adequate, much more effective than the institutions we have. So we have of patients with mental problems are. Is the connection still good?
You just went off for a moment there, I think, but you're back again.
Okay, I shall repeat it. So in Holland, we have a lot of mental health care institutions. So when you have a mental problem and it's severe, then you are institutionalized. So, and you're part of kind of a mental hospital. We say in Bertzorg T, no, a mental problem usually has to do with the environment. So we should learn the environment, how to deal with the mental problems. So we can treat the patient. So we have psychiatrists, we have psychiatric nurses, we have social workers working in teams. They deal with the patient, but they also deal with the environment. So they said, and taking care for people in their environment, it's much more effective than take them out, treat them, and bring them in again. So we said, no, we should not take them out their environment if there is not an urgent need. And usually, with most of these patients, there is no urgent need. So we try to connect with what's needed. So, and it can be that they need support every day, for example, for a while. Then we give it. So, and what we try to do was all the time focus on not on the payment system, because that's one of the problems. We have a very complicated payment system on this. is, he said, no, we are focusing on, okay, what's the problem and how can we reduce the consequences of the problem? And when you have depression, you know that there can be a lot of things which are not going well because of the depression. When you are psychotic, you know that things can all these. So we said we have good psychiatrists, we have good psychiatric nurses. They understand what's happening in this period. They will be there when it's needed, and they will withdraw when it's over. But we make the environment. We learn them how to deal with these kind of problems. So that's quite a big difference. So, and what we see is that it reduces a lot of costs. So we see that we see a lot of over-treatment with people with mental care. So we say, okay, just do what's needed. So this was the reason also that this health insurer said, okay, we want a contract with you. We said, then we don't want a normal contract, because a normal contract leads to 40% time spent on bureaucracy. So we said, we want to keep on doing what we are doing. So we said, we don't need a contract. In Holland, you can do with or without a contract. But said, if we get a contract, we want one which is supporting our way of working. So now we have, at the moment, we have a turnover of 10 million on Busortie, and I think the coming years it will grow to 50 or 100.
And they are self-managed as well, aren't they?
Yeah.
I know they're all different professions, so because that's a bit of a challenge for me.
Yeah, but that was important.
To imagine.
Yeah,
go on.
It was important to mention that we decided not to put the psychiatrists in the team. So the psychiatrists are outside the team, and they're very close connected to the team. But if they are in the team, usually they are too dominant. So they have too much influence on the others. So they agree on that. We discussed this with the psychiatrists. So we have a lot of very good psychiatrists. But I think medicalization of mental care is one of the big problems. So we try to avoid medicalization, but we use the expertise and the knowledge of the psychiatrists. So I think that, and in the teams we have nurses, psychiatric nurses, community health nurses, social workers. That's the
fantastic. Thank you, Jos. That was so helpful, because I know there'll be people in the room who are really interested in that particularly. So we've got just under 20 minutes, right, for some questions.
Okay.
And there are kind of two big themes already emerging. Susan, have you got them?
Yeah, so what I'd like to do, Jos, is maybe we could try to just do some quick fire answers, and then I'll leave the ones that I think maybe require a little bit more thought for the end. So, So the teams, are they built around geographical neighborhoods? Are they built around individual people?
No, they are. You mean the Buurtzorg teams?
Yes.
They're built around neighborhoods, in neighborhoods. So
right.
Not.
And then what is the average geographical spread in terms of, I guess, square kilometers or a geographical?
No, it's more a natural geographic area. It can be a big area in some regions where not so many people are living. Of course, Holland is a very small country with a lot of people, but we also have some regions where we have not too many people. So. But the average environment is that there are living around 5,000 to 10,000 people in the region.
And so when the team is being built, what percentage of the clients and the workers would come via word of mouth as opposed to direct referrals?
You mean the patients?
The patients, yes.
The patients, yeah. Most of them, I think, we don't do any marketing.
Mm-hmm.
so we never did. So we got a lot of free publicity. All the workers, all the nurses, they have their own informal networks. So the idea is that when they are responsible and they feel accountable, they will use their own networks, and that's one side. And the patients also feel very closely connected to the teams, so they even sometimes feel part of the organization. Sometimes I get letters from old people who say, "Oh, now I know who my director is." So then they have this feeling that it's kind of a community, that these nurses and patients and networks and volunteers, they're all part of a community which is not focusing on profit, but on focusing on healthy communities. So we are a not-for-profit organization, and that's what people reward a lot, I think.
And how are people paid? Are they fixed contract hours? Are they full-time employees?
No, we from the beginning we said every nurse, every worker should get what they want. So if they want to work 20 hours, they get a contract of 20 hours. So we have fixed contracts, but usually most of them are working more than their contract, so they get paid more. So right. they could just paid what they're working.
And so I know that you work a lot with coaches, so there are no team managers, and the coaches move from team to team as the teams require. What are the things that most frequently that the teams are getting coaching for, or where the coaches are actually serving?
Yes, we don't have very many coaches, but we have around 22 on 10,000 nurses. But every coach has all the time. There are around 10% of the teams who are struggling with some problems. So in that period, they can use support. Usually it's about sickness or sickness leave, nurses who are ill for a long time, and the teams don't know how to deal with it. Sometimes it's about conflicts. Sometimes it's about problems the teams have with their environment. So we have competitors in Holland, and a lot of our colleagues, we call them colleagues, but they see themselves as competitors sometimes, and they were not very happy with that we were growing so fast. So there were sometimes some nasty things in some, and then the coach helped us to deal with these environmental things. Sometimes there is not a good connection with the local hospital, so then the coach is helping other teams to solve these kind of problems. So it can be any kind of problem. Sometimes when the teams are growing and they have to split, so this process of splitting up sometimes can be very painful. It feels almost like a divorce, that they're splitting up in two groups.
Absolutely. One more quick question, and then we've got some more sort of complicated ones. Can you talk a little bit more about how the process you undertook regarding the insurance? How you got the insurance?
From the beginning, we had the possibility to have contracts with all the health insurers in Holland. So that's what we did. So we have from the start we had a focus on that we wanted to get a national network. But we had a struggle all the time because the payment system is not focusing on growth. So the payment, you always get paid, but the budgets are based on what you did the year before. So when we were growing so fast, we always had to struggle with the health insurers to convince them that the growth was because people chose for us for pizza. And this was sometimes very difficult because sometimes they didn't pay what we were doing. So in total, I think we didn't get paid for around 50 million euro, and we still delivered this care. So, but I had a very simple business model. So I said, if this is the income per hour, and these are the costs per hour, then we know what we need to stay financially sustainable or healthy. So I always thought we need a little space for accidents. So if we don't get paid, then still we have to stay healthy. So now we are very healthy, but and now we have with all the health insurance. 2017 was the first year that all the health insurers paid everything. So that was a celebration.
Excellent.
So, but that's yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So on the financial side, how much of the financial authority do you devolve to the teams? So do the local teams manage their own budgets? What information do they get? How do they measure their financial performance? Or is that handled in some other way?
No, they don't have to deal with. They don't want to deal with their own budgets. They can do what they want. They have their own bank account. If they want to buy something or do something, that's no problem. But we have kind of norms for what teams could spend on different topics. Most important thing about finance is that the payment we get from the health insurance. So and that's done in the back office. So the teams know, based on their productivity, how they're doing. But also we have we used to call it Team Compass. It's now Team Insight. I think it's wrong. So the team can see on the web how they're doing. So how they're doing financially, on quality. They also do evaluations about how they're working together. So I said these are three main topics: quality, collaboration, and finance. So and they can see how they're doing compared with other teams, and they can ask other teams, we see that you are doing much better than we. How did you do it? How can we learn from you? So we try to support this learning from each other.
And when teams fail, what is usually the reason? Is it financial? Is it just can't figure out how to get along? Can't recruit enough people? Or what's the normal reason if teams fail?
If teams fail, I never use the word fail. I don't let teams struggle with some things. It can be that now we see that more and more teams struggle with finding new colleagues because there are not so many more. So that's one of the things. And then the tension between how many patients can you treat and the pressure on the team. That's one of the topics teams are dealing with. But when teams are not doing well, usually it's the productivity. When they have problems in collaboration, you see that they have more and more meetings, and then they spend more and more times on meetings, and productivity goes down further. So when the basic things are going well, so the scheduling, planning, the daily process is going well, productivity is not the problem. But when these things are not going well and they need a lot of discussion on this, then you see that the results are going down. And then the coach comes in, and the coach asking questions and said, okay, what can I do? And usually then in some months it's getting better.
So that's interesting. I think what I heard you say is that there's never been a team that's stood up in a neighborhood that hasn't figured out a way to make it work or persist. That's fantastic. Ooh.
But the same, of course, there are some differences in qualifications. I always see the internet connection is unstable. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So sometimes the education level in teams is a bit higher, and then you also see that back in the results. It's not always one-on-one, but what we try to in the Buurtzorg teams, we try to have enough bachelor nurses, so that all the problems you can meet in the neighborhood, a team should be able to deal with it. So that's the patient problems. So the palliative terminal care, chronic diseases, people discharged from hospital. All the nurses and all the teams should be able to deal with all kind of problems.
I remember when we were together in Bulgaria, I asked you a question, and you challenged me very strongly. I think the question I asked was, Jos, what do you do in the situation where people just want to be told what to do and don't want to participate? And I think that you said to me that you fundamentally didn't believe that that was true for anybody, that the only time that that would happen is if the team wasn't working hard enough or creating a safe enough space for people to want to participate. Do you still believe that?
I still believe that. Even stronger. No, I think it's part of a normal development. It starts when you are a child. You want to learn, and you want to become independent. And the way we organize people, and we usually in a lot of organizations we organize distrust. We organize all kind of things where people can't grow. So, but if your perception is that people, when you create an environment and you ask people to take responsibility, then they will grow. Sometimes there will be problems, like everywhere where people work together, there can be problems, and families can be problems. That's normal. So just accept that these are there. And just invite people all the time. That's what we do. What do you need to grow as a person? So I ask several times when we have meetings, when we have conferences, we have our yearly conferences. We try to focus all the time on ask yourself all the time, what do you need as a person to have a meaningful job, to grow in your work, to grow as a person. Just do what you think is necessary. So, and therefore the education budget is very important. So it's that we should not structure the education. You know what you are, what kind of things get you inspired of. So what gives you inspiration? For one, it can be yoga or mindfulness. And for the other, it can be fitness, or it can be something complete of training in wound care. So we have a lot of different people, and they should take themselves as a starting point in how to develop. And it's the same with patients. It's the same in if our focus, our vision is that to stay independent, the life you had before is a very important thing to know. So how do you coping with things? But that's the same for the nurses. So try to focus on what makes you happy and what gives you a nice working environment.
Absolutely. So I think Buurtzorg is coming from a different position than all of the organizations that are participating in this program, in the sense that you started this way. I think that a couple of the things that is our common themes are when you're inviting people into taking more responsibility by self-organizing. One of the common things is, you need to pay me more money to be doing these extra jobs. And others, when the latter is taken away, so people come into organizations and they see the career ladder and see how their career can progress. When that is taken away and they can't see a view to how to increase their salary, how to get a better position for their CV, there's a bit of a backlash. What would you say for organizations that are trying to transition and coming up against these particular either positional or financial questions?
Yeah. Yes, when I started to design a Butoch concept, I said, before I became a nurse, I studied economics. I can calculate a lot of things by head. That's one of my hobbies. But what I said is, okay, you need to have a good picture of the cost structure and of your income. So I knew from the start that these overhead costs could be reduced to 8%. So if you can reduce the overhead costs to 8%, you have the average in Holland is between 25 and 30% overhead costs. So then you have around 18% and 17, 8% that you can spend on other things. So I think you should take into account what's reasonable. I think that everybody should earn a reasonable salary. So for example, when we took over these care workers from this bankrupt organization, we raised their salary. It was the first thing we did because my opinion was that they were like squeezed out for many years. So we started discussion about, no, we need a higher salary. So, but when of course it should be reasonable. I don't hear the argument a lot in Holland that because of the tasks they are doing, that they need to earn more. But sometimes they say our responsibility is high. So what can we do financially with that? So I think you can give a small sign that you reward it, but it doesn't need to cost much more. So I think in this process, it's a lot of also psychology. If you have a psychological contract between the workers and the organization, and you develop these discussions together. So this is what, be clear about, these are our possibilities. So what we said in 2009, I think, I said, when we have a good result, then we give everybody a bonus. And I even called it the relation repair bonus, because the nurses are so, they were so engaged with their work that their families and their partners some were complaining about it. So we said from 2010, and it was it was almost an extra monthly salary for some of the nurses. So I said, okay, this is what we earn together. This is a collective, this is your contribution, and this is what you get back. So this is the way I try to deal with it. So be open about what's possible, try to think about what's reasonable, try to avoid discussions which are not really about the content. So, some of the discussions are about what we as leaders or as managers have to learn is also to communicate in a different way with the workers. So in a lot of organizations, what I see is that communication is top down. So instead of explaining, we should start listening. What are the real arguments? What are the real reasons that people, why don't they feel valued? And I think if you do it well, it's a very healthy business model. You can do with the same money, you can make other choices. These are some ideas.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Well, we're 1 minute past the hour, Jos. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
just everybody have a lovely rest of your holiday, and keep doing what you're doing, because I'm sure I'm not the first to say that you're an inspiration to not only this sector, but everybody in the world that's trying to open the possibility for people to be different within their work. So thanks, Jos.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you, Jos.
Goodbye.
Bye.
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 Well, there we go then.
Woo! Isn't he fantastic?
So what's it raising? So I can see some really, Andrea, you look devastated. What is it?
I'm not devastated by him. I think, how fantastic. But I work in I'm speaking amongst friends, but I work in an organisation that aspires to this, and yet its vision of itself is that it's forward thinking and creative, and actually it's not at all. It's really not, and it's got a like stainless steel scaffolding structure, so it makes it really hard to influence change. And as much as it's talked about at the pointy end, I just find it really difficult. I want several of us here. We really are passionate about change and change in this direction. And I guess for me, I'm feeling, and hearing him talk just inspires me even more of how different this can be. And it reminds me, and I'm sure some of you were involved with the ICLS program, and we were one of the first organisations involved with that as well. There's a great program around supporting people with mental illness, and we actually had a bit of a falling out in the end with the Mental Health Commission, because they said your organisation achieves the best outcomes, you achieve better outcomes than anyone else we see, but your bureaucratic processes, your paperwork, it's really not quite up to scratch, And I just think, and in the end, we parted company. But what a stupid thing to say! What a stupid thing to say! And we were not. Anyway, so for me, I guess I'm feeling frustrated by the box that I work in that thinks it looks like something else. And so but inspired on the one hand of couldn't this be great? Couldn't this be great? And it's not quite so. It's a bit like pushing uphill. My daughter, when she was very little, she's not little anymore, and she had a favourite story, and it was about this little boy who's forever pushing something up the hill, and that's kind of what I feel like a bit. Anyway, that's me.
Who else is keen to share what's coming up as a result of that?
I could.
Thanks. Morgan.
I'm a bit, I feel sometimes a bit deflated. I guess the context they're working within, the willingness of government to come on board and go, okay, we'll just throw out the ISO and you guys can just decide what your quality system will be. I mean, for that to happen in Australia is, I can't ever see that happening in Australia. So those kinds of costs are never going to go away for us. We know with the NDIS, there's not, 20 to 40% overhead kind of fat in any of the direct sort of support worker type roles that are happening within NDIS, and we need to reduce the overheads simply to be viable. There's no money that would be then made available to increase people's wages, or so in some ways I just feel really deflated. And I don't know why, because I knew all of this, I did know all of this. So I think one thing that I have taken away from that is that moving to self-organising teams can't be a cost-cutting exercise. It can never be the motivation. And I think the reason it's worked for him is because, or worked for Bert's, is because there's that absolute belief at the beginning that this is a better way, that we can do healthcare better. So that needs to be, I think, the motivating factor of any of this kind of change, is that whatever it is that we're doing, we can do it better, not that we can do it cheaper. That's me.
Thanks, Megan. Who's next? Alison.
Go to the wrong place. Yeah, I liked hearing the reality that he basically delivered 50 million euros worth of services because he was he believed in what he was doing, and he in a way he had that opportunity to give the opportunity to the funders to change their ways. I totally hear what Andrew and Megan are saying about why they feel deflated, because they're just thinking, how's this ever going to happen here? But the idea is that you can go out on a limb and that other people can respond to that, but that there is a cost associated to that. I just like hearing the reality of that. So I don't know whether all of us have got 50 million euros to take that chance, though, that risk. So it is sobering as well. I also liked hearing a bit more about the finances. Thanks, Susan, for asking the financial questions, to see to get a greater understanding of what information is given to the teams versus what happens in the back office. And his idea of, he said it a few times, I wrote it down, I'm on the wrong page now because I wrote down so much. Avoid disturbance to the nurses. He said it a few times, and just that one of his guiding principles was, let's not get in the way of them doing their work. So that's something I really want to think about. How do we get people the right information and set the right boundaries for them so that we can free people up to do the work? Because the complexity of the funding is a big issue, and how do we manage that? So yeah, I think there's lots of food for thought.
But it's interesting, Alison. And I catch myself out with this language all the time. I think I heard you just say, how do we set the boundaries? But what I heard him very much saying is, it's not up to the back office to set the boundaries. It's up to the teams to decide what they want to do. And how do you get that balance, right?
Yeah, I guess because I don't completely understand how they work there. So I guess that's where he lost the 50 million euros. But we have the funding package that says we're going to deliver 500 hours to this client, and we get paid for that. And he talked about productivity as well, and measuring productivity. So in terms of, and he did talk about having, giving them the norms, what they should be spending. So he gave them freedoms, but he also gave expectations. That's what I heard him saying, and comparing with others. So I think there do need to be some sort of boundaries or targets or guidance in place so people can actually measure for themselves whether they're going okay. So that's what I mean in terms of setting the boundaries so that you end up with a viable organisation. So I don't think it's completely, do whatever you like, guys. I think there were some.
No, totally not. Yeah, I was talking more about like mandating or saying what is in and what is out. And I understand that you were saying something else. I also got the sense that their IT systems are incredibly robust and absolutely optimized to make it as easy as possible. And I think that we can't underestimate the power of that as well. Kate, I'm interested. Sorry, I'm interested from you. What did you hear anything from Joost today that either pinged something from your visit or clarified something, or anything that's changed for you in your thinking?
There's probably something about, I think, what Alison's saying around there are frameworks, so it is quite clear about what's expected of teams, in a way that I think he wouldn't describe it I mean, he's working really hard to listen. I suppose that's probably the kind of critical thing. To listen to teams, what is it that they need? But there are frameworks, there are protocols, which actually the impression I got when I was out with teams is that that's really needed. They want that, they want to know what's expected and where where they start and stop, if you like. So I think, I don't think he got into a lot of the detail about that. The thing that's really screaming in my head, and it's probably to do with listening to Andrea and Megan, is, and I don't know if this, I'll try and keep it brief, but it's in government's interests to set up a market of competitors. It's only ever in government's interest. There is very little evidence to say it's in the consumer's interest. And particularly in healthcare, there's very little evidence to say that. So this idea that we are all competitors. So Andrea, your example with the Mental Health Commission, I know this is being recorded, so I should be careful what I say. I think the Mental Health Commission have driven me. I've never seen a government body behave like that. I don't know, I wanted to write about it. It was so incredible, right? So there's something about why. So he talked about colleagues. That was the word he used. Do you remember he was talking about, he doesn't want to talk about competitors. He talks about colleagues in the sector. And I've been toying with a project called Ethical Providers. So what does it really look like for us as a bunch of organisations, community organisations, not suppliers, community organisations working together to influence the system, influence the government? Now, I suppose that for me is another part of the picture. The self-management and how we organise is brilliant. I'm really interested in that. But there's a bigger picture for me about how we behave, how we influence. I mean, even stuff like, Megan, the NDIS, actually, if people had real freedom over their funding, we would all look incredibly different as organisations. We wouldn't just be flogging support work. I think we'd be doing something much more interesting. What's going to make sense to this person at this time with their funding. So I don't know, I may be on a bit of a rant. I'm kind of inspired by it, but also livid about it as well. Like there's a kind of, oh my God, like why are we all playing this stupid game? It's not working for people. What's it going to take for us to work together as allies to people and families in a way that is going to actually achieve something, that, anyway, that's where my thinking's gone. I'm going to shut up. It's only bloody 9 o'clock here in the UK and I'm on holiday. I'm going to be doing my head in by mid-afternoon. So that's where my thinking went, that there's a bigger picture at play that I think we could all influence, really.
Mm-hmm. What about Alex, Vanessa, Lee, Maren? What are you thinking? Or Jason even, and Natasha.
I think my thoughts about all of this and the self-management, because I think it's fantastic. And I think one of our first things when we all caught up, I think it was you, Kate, you were talking about how the frontline workers, they're a lot of, say, if you're getting X amount of dollars in an NDIS plan, majority is going into administration, so it's not going towards the frontline workers and giving them that sort of keeping them on board. And I think it's because I would love to reshape that and say, but when you look at an organisation and something which is so established, like all of our organisations, I find it's really hard to change that with something which is so ingrained and currently ingrained. And when you look at someone like ROJos and what they've done over there at Birdsong, they started small, and the big thing he started with one team and that group, and he was able to bring people on who bought into that idea and that whole concept. But when you've already got a big organisation with working a certain way, I see it as a lot harder to change when you're already carrying a massive workload and that they're trying to squeeze money. I think there's a lot of challenges there. I think to build something like Birdsong now in the sort of environment we're in Western Australia with the funding, I think you almost would need to start again. Does everyone else feel that way?
I mean, I was thinking about something that he said, which was basically they don't accept contracts that don't accept the Bertzold way of being. So if I think about the contracts we hold now, which ones would we maintain if we wanted to, if we drew that line in the sand, I guess. And I can't think of any that we possibly would, given the compliance requirements and all of the other stuff that comes with those contracts. If we took the Bertzold line, we would have to give up pretty much all of them and start from scratch anyway.
Megan, one of the things that's just come back to me is, one of the things, he did talk about it, but he didn't, what I remember anyway about the conversations when I was there, is he's very clear about making a distinction between being compliant and influence in practice, right? So he talks about them as being two completely separate things. He did kind of talk about the real world and the compliance world today, but he talked, when we were there, he talked a lot about you play some of these rules to be in the game, or you're willing to be in the game, you need to kind of agree to some of these rules, but don't delude yourself that stuff influences practice. Actually, sort that out and get in the game. But the stuff that you want to focus on is what influences practice. And I suppose what really jumped out for me about that point was how I think in my career anyway, I've merged them together. So I've believed that the kind of quality crap does really influence practice. And I suppose I see that in a different way now. So I think although he's saying we don't accept contracts, I heard that really loudly today, which I think that's brilliant. But I definitely, in further conversation with him, have heard him talk about actually see it for what it is. This is a game we're playing, sort that out and then focus on the real world. That's kind of, so I don't know, there was a bit of challenge for me around that when he was talking. I don't know. Don't know if that helps. Probably not.
I think what I took away from his conversation about the influencing practice was more that around their quality systems, they had to do it to be in the game, but what they then did was go on to demonstrate how they had a better system to demonstrate quality, and that then changed, so it changed policy. Which is probably infinitely possible in a tiny country like that, but not in a country like Australia, where the quality systems are often driven from a national level or state level. I don't know the system of government over there, whether they have the multi sort of layers that we've got in Australia, but I noticed that also, the difference between funding in Australia and funding in New Zealand. It's so vastly different because they're dealing with one government over there. It's so much simpler, it seems.
Any more reflections from anybody? I can see you moving, Natasha.
So I think I'm a bit weird this afternoon because I've just spent an hour completely
Can't hear you,
immersed.
Natasha.
Hello?
I can hear you.
Yeah. So I'm a bit weird this afternoon, Susan, because whilst I normally spend a lot of time worrying and thinking about the bigger picture and, oh my gosh, how is this going to work? This afternoon I've just spent an hour completely immersed in hearing about people working to their strengths, people enjoying the work that they do, that the work being completely focused around the patient. And I just love to hear that. I actually just really love to hear that. And while I was listening to it, I was able to connect with different things that are changing in our organisation as well. So, yeah, it did the opposite for me. Probably other presentations I've sat and thought, but this afternoon I didn't.
Awesome. Right, Kate, maybe I'll hand over to you. This is our last webinar, but we're going to be together in 1 month and 2 days or something like that.
Yeah. So I just wanted to put a call out to remind everybody that this is our last webinar, but that we've got the final workshop on the 14th, is it? Monday the 14th of August. So I'll ask Bev to send out another reminder about that. But I suppose it's an opportunity for us to come together in person.
Monday the 17th of September.
Right, brilliant. Thanks, Susan. So it's the chance to come together, connect, and to showcase, so to talk about what we've been doing. Don't feel the pressure that you need to turn up and have kind of, we've done X, Y, and Z. I think Andrea and Megan, some of what you were sharing today has been really helpful, because this is the real work. What does it look like when there's a steel iron hierarchy and, it's impenetrable and all of that stuff. So I think it's a chance for us to really connect and share, where we're going. The other thing that I wanted to just flag with you is WACE are looking at continuing some kind of community of practice for this group, if you want it, so that we could meet monthly on a call like this and, chew the fat, think about it. So yeah, anyway, that's an option. So I'm going to send out an email to everybody around that to see what you think about that, which keeps us connected. It just feels like it's too soon for us to stop, I think there's just some, I don't know. Let's see what we all think about that. So so I just wanted to remind you, the workshop's coming up. Make sure it's in your diary, and just have a think about what it is you'd like to share. If you want to feature in the WACE publication as an organisation, what is it you'd like to feature in for or about? And we're definitely not just looking for the kind of lovely stories. We're looking for the real stories. If we can help the broader sector think about this stuff, then that's certainly WACE's aim. So so I'm looking forward to seeing you all at the workshop. It feels like a long time away. That's me then, Susan. That's all I had to share, really.
Great. Should we do a checkout then? We've got about 6 minutes, and there's only a few of us left here. So I guess, considering this is our last time together in this medium, maybe just a reflection on how it's felt to do so much of this program online and virtually. Maybe what you've learned, what's felt good, what's felt frustrating. And I'll start. I think for me, I'm quite comfortable in this medium, and I've really appreciated recording everything and sharing the recordings. I've also appreciated and noticed how people have gotten more comfortable as the months have gone on with using this. I'm a little bit disappointed that Slack never really took off for us in sort of that asynchronous in between times communication. So I'm really keen to understand how either we can do that better, or how I can lose my attachment to the thought that we use that as a communication platform, and maybe just use it as a place to put notices and readings. But I think there's something there. I just don't think that we've quite got the hang of it. So those are my noticings on the technology. Who'd like to go next? Andrea.
I'm comfortable with the technology. I'm kind of disappointed it wasn't a bit richer at times with more people. But that said, I think it hasn't detracted from learning from each other and sharing experiences. So I felt good being part of that, and it's helpful knowing that you're not on your own. So, and the medium's helpful time-wise. We live in Margaret River, so often it's difficult to kind of join in things. So, as far as I'm keen for a monthly kind of reflection, because I feel like we're still keen. We're kind of almost not of the starting block. So I think there's lots to share yet, and still a journey to participate in. And I think for me, Slack is a good medium, and the good thing for us that's come out of it, we are now using it, and our teams are now using it as a communication tool. And so you've introduced us to the use of Slack, which is turning out to be really helpful for people. In this medium, I think speaking for myself, I haven't had a lot to share and interact about yet, but I still think it's got a place. Yeah. Jason, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I think it's good. I think, like, I probably sound a bit jaded I think we've had a busy period recently, and maybe sometimes, and it's just the nature, you know, with service coordination and service and support, you know, you get those periods, and recently we're just coming in and are still in that period. I find sometimes that taking the time out of work where, you know, you're getting calls and messages and you need to line up supports and make sure everything's going well. I don't know if afterwards, if an organisation wanted people to attend and people were willing, they could stay behind afterwards after a working day, because honestly taking time out at times has felt really difficult. I don't know, I found it like it's hard, and to be honest, I reckon if you looked at, and I know it's relevant and I know it's really, really good, and to be honest, I love this whole self-management thing. I think it's so great, you know, and I think the potential, especially in this industry, is huge to have invested workers and to support those workers and give them autonomy. But, you know, like to make the time when you're already busy, when you can't, and we're trying to change, but it's difficult. I don't know. That's my only feedback, but it was worth it. I've had a good time. I think the Zoom is good, and yeah, we found Slack good, but over to next people.
Great, thanks. What about you, Kate?
I've really enjoyed Zoom. I didn't think I would. I'm definitely kind of old school. I was thinking we need to be in a room together. So I was nervous about that, to see what that would be like. But I've been amazed at how, and this could just be my perception of it, how it creates some kind of community. Like, I've been amazed at it. So the other program that we've been running, Building Brilliant Teams, they are, you know, they're the same people who turn up each week. So it's slightly different to this one. But yeah, I'm amazed at what it's created. So I'm over the moon with it. I think it's been really helpful. And I'm on my holidays in the UK and still able to be part of it. So that's bloody brilliant. Yeah, great.
Avivo, ladies?
I think it's been great in terms of being able to connect with organisations that we wouldn't have been able to connect with, like Jos there, and you know, all the other people that we've been speaking to around the world, and to connect with you guys when you've been in all kinds of different places. Can't remember how many times different places you've been in, Susan, but so that's been really good. And yeah, I like the technology, like the Slack technology. Sorry, the Zoom technology, the Slack, yeah, disappointed again, you know, because I go on there quite a bit, and but as well, I think if I was using it a lot, I think I've got a couple of channels going now, and trying to keep on top of it can be another demand as well. I find I'm not reading everything that I'd like to read on there that I see. Yeah, monthly meetings going forward, I guess I have a little bit of cynicism, because there has been that sort of falling away of people. And I think it'd be good for us to really know what is it we want to get out of those meetings going forward, so that, yeah, that we have something to talk about, or something to share each month. I'm willing to give it a go, but it would be good to think about what is it we want to get out of that. Yeah.
Love Zoom. It's been a shame that, you know, we've not always had all the organisations together, but I've secretly liked it when it's been smaller for some reason, so I'm just being really honest there. Slack's something that I've spent heaps of time in and looking at and going into different bits and pieces, and lots of time contemplating on, should I say that? Shouldn't I? Should I do it? So that was a bit weird, but I think, again, if I became accustomed to using it, I probably would use it more, and I think it's been good. And I'd be really keen to catch up monthly, and probably a bit different to you, Alison. I'd be really keen just to watch it organically row. We're on the journey. We're all engaged. We're all doing it now. So I'd be really keen just to get together and talk about that more and watch it grow and see what happens.
Lovely. And Megan?
I've really enjoyed it. I mean, we are in some sort of process at the moment, shifting towards this ideal, and it's, to be honest, hasn't been an easy ride by any stretch of the imagination, and I don't imagine that it's going to get any easier anytime soon. So I've really appreciated, I guess, knowing that we're not the Lone Rangers in our struggle with this, that everybody else can be equally as dysfunctional at times. And I've really liked Zoom because putting something into my GPS and trying to find training rooms and getting to the other side of the city in the morning in the middle of peak hour, or walking away from something when you're halfway through it, knowing that you're going to spend an hour in your day travelling is not my idea of fun. So yeah, I've really enjoyed the Zoom aspect. I probably haven't engaged with the other part. I can't remember what it's called, Slack. And that's probably because I'm not an early adopter of most things. I only recently got myself a Facebook account and accepted the fact that it wasn't just a fad that was going to evaporate sometime, back when it first originated. So yeah, that's probably explains why I haven't really engaged a lot with Slack, but I can see the potential of it. And the other thing, and I'm looking forward to seeing her when we all get together, and I hope she's there, has been to catch up with Jeanette, because that's brought back some really sort of fond memories of, he was her little boy or her baby even then when I knew Jeanette and used to look after her little boy Harley. So, and he was one of my inspirations and reasons for sort of moving in the career direction that I moved in. So I'm really grateful and thankful for that. And I'd be keen to catch up monthly, just so I can have that support and reassurance that we are all equally dysfunctional at times.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. It's been really, really great, and really looking forward to seeing you in a month's time.
Yep. See you all soon.
See ya.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.